Today we're going to be talking about the heart's role in circulation. Before we get into that, I would like to talk about the body's blood vessels. So our body has these long tubes called blood vessels, and they carry blood that go to and from the heart and different parts of our bodies, our different tissues. They can be divided into two categories. We're gonna define veins and arteries. So veins carry blood that have already traveled to a bunch of different tissues that gave its nutrients and its oxygen to those tissues so they can survive. And the veins bring that deoxygenated blood without oxygen, back to the heart. Now, arteries are the opposite. They bring blood away from the heart. I remember artery starts with an A, so artery away from the heart to target areas, the organs, the bones, in order for those areas to get the nutrients and the oxygen that it needs from the blood. So let's start with the deoxygenated blood coming to the heart. So as you can see here, you've got two big tubes, a vein. This called the vena cava. This is the top part, which is the superior vena cava, and the bottom part, which is the inferior vena cava. Now, all of your veins in your body end up draining into this big vein, the vena cava. And that ends up draining into our first chamber of the heart, our first of four chambers, called the right atrium. As you can see here, travels in to the right atrium. Now, if we zoom in, we can see this little fold. This is called the tricuspid valve. When the right atria contracts, or when it squeezes, what happens is this fold opens and the blood from the right atrium drains into this bottom part right here. And this is called the right ventricle. That's our second chamber. Now, when the heart relaxes, when that contraction, that squeeze ends, this guy closes back up. What that does, that keeps the blood that was just drained in here from going back up into the right atrium. We don't want that. That can cause a lot of health problems. So now, once the blood has gone through the valve into the right ventricle, it's going to travel up into the pulmonary artery, once again, after a contraction. But before it gets to the pulmonary artery, it travels through the pulmonary valve. Same concept here. It's this guy right here. Same concept. When you have a squeeze, this opens and it lets the blood in. And when the heart relaxes, when there's no squeeze, it closes back up. Once the blood gets into the pulmonary artery, it's now sent to the lungs. This is the super, super important part. Once the blood goes to the lungs, it gets all that oxygen and all those nutrients back that originally weren't there after the blood came back to the heart through the veins. So it goes through the pulmonary valve, through the pulmonary artery to the lungs, and it comes back through the pulmonary veins, which are right here. These guys right here. So now once we reach the pulmonary veins, the blood is going to drain into the left atrium, which is our third chamber. Once it reaches the left atrium, there's going to be a little contraction, and this valve is going to open up. If you haven't noticed, there's a little bit of a trend with the valves. When it squeezes, when this guy squeezes, the left atrium squeezes, this valve is going to open, blood is going to travel into the left ventricle, and when the heart relaxes, when there's no squeeze, that'll close back up. Once again, all these valves prevent blood from going back to where it came from. If you notice, this part of the heart This is a wall of the heart. This is all muscle. This is way thicker than this. And that's because the heart needs to squeeze super hard once the blood has reached this portion. And it's going to shoot all of the blood up through the aorta, which is a massive, thick artery that sends all of the blood to the rest of the body. Before that, though, it has to travel through the aortic valve, which is covered by the 7, but it's right here. Once again, when there's the contraction, the blood flows up, the valve opens, and when there's no contraction, when it relaxes, it closes to prevent backflow. So once everything leaves the aorta, it goes to the rest of the body. It gives the body the nutrients it needs. Then it returns back to the heart to repeat the process and to get more oxygen and nutrients.